Welcome back. I just wanted to show you a quick video about just making a couple upgrades to your wardrobe. Really easy alterations that you can make to your clothes to make them more wearable or to make them different, just to make you reuse your clothes a little bit more so your clothes have a longer lifespan. The first really easy thing you can do is replace buttons on shirts or coats and things like that. So for my example, I had this trench coat that I thrifted maybe a year ago, and I really loved the shape of it. It was perfect. Buttons were very vintage, like the color kind of disturbed me. So to make my vintage coat look a little bit more modern, I switched out the buttons for these tortoiseshell ones. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you the process for that. So you'll just cut off the buttons. On mine, after I cut them off, I could still see the puncture holes of the where the old button was, which was pretty much just became my guide for where I was gonna sew the next ones. You'll see here that I just sewed through two sides instead of doing crisscross. You can kind of do whatever pattern for sewing through the button that you want. Just most of my clothes and like other shirts and jackets and things like that have had that just straight up and down for two, straight up and down for the other two, and so I just kept with that. So yeah, you want to do this for all the buttons that you have. Don't forget to look at the sleeves, because often people forget that there's, maybe 4 on each side. That's a lot of buttons. Mine just had 1 on each side, and then mine did have 1 button on the back, which I almost forgot about, but luckily I bought enough buttons, so that all worked out. Also, if you're doing a coat, make sure to look under the collar, because mine had another button under the collar I just never used really. So don't forget about that. You don't want mismatched buttons, unless that's what you're going for. So yeah, after, maybe a good hour of trading out these buttons, I have kind of like a brand new coat. It looks a lot more modern, and it's really what I was looking for. What's great with the buttons is that you can do this as many times as you want with other buttons. I feel like I'm saying buttons like a million times in this video, but that's okay. You can really do this as many times as you want. Like, pick something crazy, like I want lime green buttons for spring. Put those on, then you can train them out for fall. It's really fun to play around with that because you can't really mess up, and if you do, you just cut out the button and do it again. It's kind of fail-proof for someone beginning with alterations and things like that. The next quick alteration I want to show you is hemming. I think this is a skill everyone should know. Hemming is quite easy, especially if you're doing it the way I'm going to be showing you. So my example for this one are these linen blend pants, and I put them in the wash and they came out different lengths on the legs. I don't know what happened, but here we are. We're gonna crop them. So they were full length originally, but only after washing, only one leg was full length, and then the other one's weird in between. So I decided to just crop them completely, make them a little bit more like capris. They are linen blend, so I usually just wear them. I would wear them in the summer, so a cropped pant kind of makes sense. So first I'm just going to do a rough kind of approximation of where I want the leg to go. I'm going to roll up the one side that is a little bit shorter, kind of mark where that is, and for me it was about 3 rolls, and I think that's kind of like the point where I would be happy with it. I did this kind of in multiple ways. Like, I measured it first from the top of the waistband to the bottom of the pant, but then I just kind of found, where I marked it was gonna be fine, and I'll measure from that where I put those pins and then approximate how long I want to have extra fabric to kind of roll into a hem. For me, that was 4.5 inches. So what I did is I measured 4.5 inches from where those pins are down, and then cut off the extra length. And I did that on both sides. The reason I measured from the pins and not from the hem is because my pants were different lengths. So if I measured from the hem 4.5 inches up, then I would still have different length pants. So keep that in mind if you're working with something similar. So once I had that cut off, I just experimented with how I wanted to roll them, because the fabric that I'm working with frays really easily and I didn't want to use a serger. I knew I was going to be rolling the hem before I would sew it down, so I decided to roll it 1, 2, 3 times to really make sure that those extra fringes are going to be stuck inside of the hem after I sew it. So I did that with one side, and then I did it with the other, and then just kind of made sure. After I pinned them, I tried them on to make sure that they were roughly the same length. So once I was happy with the hem kind of pinned there, I started sewing. So when I started sewing, I made sure to just kind of do inside fabric for that first pull through to kind of hide the knot that I was going to be putting in. And then I brought my needle over and kind of under that flap of rolled hem and then pushed through all of the layers. So this would make a small line vertical. So this would make a small vertical line of thread on the outside of the pant, which would show to people, and then kind of do a loop on the inside. I believe this is called the trouser hem. I don't know, it's kind of like the first hem I learned when I just did hand sewing, and I really like it. It's pretty easy. Make sure that you're not cinching it and making it kind of ruffled. You want to every once in a while push the fabric flat so that you don't have it gathered at the bottom, and so you just want it to be flat. After you've done it all the way around, you can do a couple knots to secure it like so, and then you can take all the pins out. Then you'll do the same thing with the other pant leg until you have 2 finished legs. And yeah, here I am wearing them. They're the length I wanted and they look pretty smooth. Obviously you'll probably want to iron them if you want a really crisp finish, but because I have a looser, more relaxed fabric like linen blend, I don't mind that it's a little baggy on the hem. If you want to go in again with a more secure stitch, you can do so, but I just left it with this kind of loose trouser stitch because in my experience that's never unraveled for me. And my final just tip for easy alterations is to dye your clothes. So oftentimes I'm thrifting and I find a piece that I really like, but I hate the color. And if it's a lighter color, it's going to be really easy to dye. The one thing to keep in mind though is the material that your item is made of. If you're going to be using traditional red dye, you want it to be a natural material like cotton, linen, silk, those kind of things. You don't want anything with polyester, or if you do have polyester, you want the percentage to be really low, like less than half of the item. So for example, I bought this sweatsuit just online and it's 50% cotton, 50% polyester, and I did a purple dye and the color took pretty well, as you'll see here. I did kind of like a little bit of a tie-dye. They were originally white, and I would suggest that if you're going to be doing something that has a polyester content of any sort. One thing also to note is that the threads are going to remain the color that they are. Most garments use a polyester or synthetic thread because it's more durable than a cotton or natural material. So if you have a white sweatshirt, you're going to have white threads. So that's something to keep in mind if you have a heavily threaded or hemmed item that you don't want to kind of stand out. So that sweatsuit was cotton polyester blend, and then this shirt is just silk. So this one I've washed so many times, you'll see that the color is a bit more faded. The shirt was also originally a like warm cream color, so it's not going to be the pure white, so it doesn't look as blue as the other. They both use the same dye. But you'll also see on this one that I swirled it and did more of a tie-dye effect than I did for that one. That one I just kind of dumped in a bucket and just saw what happened. So you can make some like really cool patterns. I know tie-dye can sometimes be tacky, but if you're just doing one color and you do it in kind of more sophisticated silhouette like this, it can turn out really cool and kind of just look like water. So one other cool thing I wanted to add about dyeing clothes is that you can make sets in whatever color you want. So these pants were originally cream, this shirt was just white, and then dyeing them I kind of got a cool hot pink set, which I've never seen in a store, so that's something that's really cool and makes your clothing more unique and personalized to you. One last warning though, when you're dyeing your clothing, if you have multiple items that you want to dye the same color, you'll want to make sure you do them different times. So instead of putting all the clothes in one bucket, dyeing it all at one time and then taking them all out, I would suggest doing one item at a time. So I had these two in the same bucket. I just shoved them all in one and wanted to see what happened. This one came out really nicely. It's kind of like a washed, very soft green. This is also a silk shirt. And yeah, it was originally a kind of dove gray, and so that stitching still shows through, but I think it actually complements the color really nicely and just kind of looks like a nice washed, soft silk shirt. But this linen skirt was also in the mix, and you'll see that the color looks very distraught, I would say. There's like weird yellow colors coming through on splotches, and then you'll have just the regular green, kind of more blue tone greens coming through. This, I think, was a product of having multiple items of clothing in the bucket at once that had different colors of dyes on them already. So I put them in with a shirt that was, you know, mint green and then dove gray and then, you know, another color, I think maybe yellow to dye. And so this linen skirt kind of absorbed those other dyes as they came out, is what my theory is. So I think if I were to do it again, I would have put them in at different times and maybe used multiple dye bottles in different sessions to make sure that I didn't have like an interesting splotchy color kind of result. What's great about dyeing is that you can always dye it again, dye it a different color. RIT also has a color kind of like extractor, so like I could use a RIT powder to make the color come out of the skirt before dyeing it again, which I think is what a lot of people suggest, but I'm also not too fazed by it. I might just dye this one a black or something like that on my next try. So those were all the, you know, easy alterations I wanted to show you today, and I hope that you have a little more courage kind of customizing your wardrobe, especially with dyeing or buttons or hemming, things like that, and I'll see you next week.